West Bengal's decision to ban the movie The Kerala Story seems to have made it even more high profile. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. The debate rages on. Truth, propaganda, or hate speech. Depending on your point of view, you might have a very different opinion on the movie The Kerala Story. The movie makers, even before the release of the film, had to edit its description on YouTube. The movie makers had earlier claimed that 32,000 women from Kerala had joined the Islamic State. This was then amended to 3. That aside, the opposition parties, unlike the BJP that has welcomed the film, have attacked the film as an illustration of hate speech. The Prime Minister himself has endorsed this movie at a public event in a public speech. Shashi Tharoor, who of course is a member of parliament from Kerala, tweeted saying, "Not our Kerala story, but our ban's the answer." And what is that space which separates fact from fiction when it comes to this movie and the charge of women and men being drawn to the Islamic State? Remember, as per the government's own record in Parliament in 2019, only 155 people nationwide have been linked to the ISIS in any manner. This includes sympathizers. In fact, the actual number of people nationwide who are reported to have joined the Islamic State in India is 66. This in a country of 1.4 billion people. So the figure 32,000 was absolutely ludicrous, but the film director is claiming that it was Chandy who first used this number. There is no official record, however, of this number in any official government document. Let's go across now to Shashi Tharoor, who's our newsmaker today. He joins us on the program. Shashi, clearly you're not a fan of the movie, but since you are somebody who's in the creative space and has never been a fan of bans, do you intend to see the movie? Have you seen the movie?
I haven't seen it, and I must say I've seen the trailer that was going around on the internet, and I was so appalled that I objected. I must say I'm disinclined to see it unless there are compelling reasons why they have made a case that one needs to be aware of. But the irony about all of this is I had actually met with a constituent of mine whose daughter was one of those 3 women known to the Indian authorities who did convert, did go to Kabul, and whose husbands were killed in action against the Taliban because they're ISIS people. And our intelligence operations operatives have met these people in prison. And what I hear unofficially, I have no access to any classified information, but what I've heard unofficially is that the women were quite unreconciled and unwilling to come back. So I knew about 3 cases. I would not extrapolate from 3 cases a general kind of story about a society of 40 million people, which has been long known for tolerance and harmonious coexistence. It would have been all right if they had specifically talked about these 3 individuals as a particular story. They have every artistic freedom to do that. But what they have done instead, I'm sorry to say, Barkha, is to call the film The Kerala Story, as if this is a depiction of an entire state. Their publicity material spoke in every instance of 32,000, which, as you've just explained to your viewers, is a preposterous number. In fact, the entire ISIS, every single individual from around the world in ISIS, cumulatively has been estimated by Western sources, which spend time on this, at a grand total of 30,000 at peak. So in other words, every single country, Islamic country in the world that produced ISIS fighters, produced a grand total of 30,000. So the idea that Kerala alone gave 32,000 to ISIS is so blatantly false that one is bound to suspect the integrity of the filmmakers. And frankly, we've seen this kind of demonization going on. We've already had the example of the film The Kashmir Files. I suppose it would have been too blatant to call this the Kerala Files, so they called it the Kerala Story, but it's part and parcel of the same thing. It's part of a larger agenda to sort of reinforce the Hindu khatre mein hai kind of argument that we have been hearing for some years with scant credibility in our politics. And therefore, I see this as a purely politically motivated exercise.
Let's pick up, though, the example you gave, the real life example of, you said three, some reports say four women who are presently in an Afghan prison. They're from Kerala. In fact, their families have been petitioning, people like yourself, they've been petitioning the court. The fact that this happened means that there are episodes or incidents where this can happen. Considering these girls or these women are from Kerala, what is your take on this? Should India allow these women to come back home? I'll come back to the movie, but I just wanted your perspective on this.
Look, on the substance, yes, I do know there are four from media reports, and I have no reason to doubt that. I personally was made aware of three, of whom only one was a constituent from Thiruvananthapuram. So naturally, the one from my constituency is the one I met, the mother, who was quite anxious, and she actually traveled to Delhi. This was quite some years ago because Sushma Swaraj was still foreign minister, and I arranged a meeting for her to meet Sushma ji and present her case and ask for the government to intervene. And I think that the truth is that on these kinds of matters, it is normal for an MP to want to help a constituent in distress. Now, there are two, again from media reports, two things that are coming across. One, that the girl herself wasn't keen on coming back to India, that she felt she had found her cause, her mission in life. And secondly, that the government itself was also a bit reluctant to allow such radicalized elements to come back. Now, there's been a very similar debate in the UK, Barkha, where some Muslim girls went off and became essentially sex slaves of the ISIS fighters in Syria. And after the ISIS forces were defeated there, they ended up in essentially a prison camp. And the British have refused to take two or three of these girls back, saying they're far too far gone, and they would be a danger to British society. And again, just like in the situation I'm aware of, the mothers are saying, our daughters went astray, we'll be responsible. They are British citizens, bring them back. So it's a dilemma that at least two countries are facing, perhaps more than two, because there were other misguided people from other West European countries who also went and did this. Now, what does this say about Kerala? I would say, frankly, nothing at all. It speaks about the fact that individuals in various societies may be vulnerable to the appeal of a kind of a fanatic faith that claims to have the answers to every one of life's eternal mysteries. And it's one of these things we all know in very many faiths of people who get completely enraptured by the idea of the absolute as preached by that particular faith. And it's true, frankly, of Orthodox or even fundamentalist elements in every religion. And so there are a handful of cases, but we have to look at them against the context of the overall population. There are 40 million people in Kerala. There have been an enormous number of examples we can find. Most recently, in fact, just a few days ago, there was the story of the wedding of a young Hindu girl to a young Hindu man, and the girl was given away by her Muslim parents who had brought her up. That's Kerala. In fact, if you were to talk about the Kerala story, stories of genuine, not just coexistence, but affection between communities is far more typical. Our Onam festival, which unfortunately you folks don't have in the north, is a festival in which all communities, Hindu, Muslim, and Christian, celebrate jointly in the spirit of Christmas, giving gifts to each other, organizing feasts, wearing fresh clothes. And it's something which is so typical of Kerala that even a tradition which began in the midst of the past as a Hindu tradition is now equally embraced by people of all faiths. A story. You normally talk about very high human development indicators, the highest literacy rate in India, one of the highest per capita incomes in India, empowered women, strongly socially conscious communities, a very effective work against the Nipah virus and the COVID virus. You get all of these positive stories of Kerala. And then you have these cretinous filmmakers trying to reduce Kerala to some sort of radical fundamentalist hotbed, which it simply isn't. Those of us who live there, know people there, we know what Kerala is all about. And so what we resent is if they'd called it, I don't know, a love story gone wrong or whatever else they want to call it, or the tragic story of one woman or three women or whatever they want, they were entirely entitled to make it. I've never even called for the ban of this film, despite its tendentious title. But the point is, it's not representative as the publicity material and the trailer alleged it was. It is
Yeah.
not
So
representative
is
of
so
Kerala.
so is your problem that the movie is called The Kerala Story, or is your
Yeah.
problem that it spoke about 32,000 women? If it had spoken about three women, and said, I'm just making this up, a journey to jihad. These were women who got Islamized. They joined the Islamic State.
Absolutely.
You'd be okay with it?
I'd be okay with that, though. I mean, I've not seen the film itself. But if you didn't ever claim 32,000, if you called it A Journey to Jihad or just Journey to Jihad, or some other title, then it becomes a story about real people, embroidered perhaps for fictional purposes, and they could have a disclaimer saying that though it's inspired by real events, the story is fiction. And that would have been fine. I think that I may not like the film still, but I certainly would not have objected to it the way I have, because my objections were based on both these two things: the title itself and the publicity material and the trailer, which alleged that Kerala is this hotbed of Islamic radicalism, which has produced 32,000 women going off to ISIS fighters. That is the most absurd, preposterous, dishonest, and mendacious statement about my state. And that's why I objected to it.
Do you disagree then with what Mamata Banerjee has chosen to do?
Look, I personally am not a fan of banning anything, Barkha. And I've been consistent from the days of the ban on the satanic verses, which I objected to the ban on the Kerala story. I've objected to it simply because I do believe that freedom of expression is a value, even if it's misused, it doesn't cease to be a value. If it is misused in a way that is actually dangerous to society, for example, freedom of expression being misused to incite violence, then yes, under the laws of the land, banning is possible. But if it is merely freedom of expression being used to tell lies in fictional guise and to advocate a particular political point of view, they have a right to do it, and we have a right not to see it. We have a right not to add to their coffers by spending money buying a ticket to see it, and we have a right to attack it publicly. All of that, I think, is what freedom of expression implies. Unfortunately, what we're seeing here, Barkha, is a situation where so many passions have been inflamed by this that one state government has decided to take a stand. They have a significant Muslim minority in Bengal, and they probably felt that this is something that could be inflammatory. I can't substitute my judgment for the chief minister.
So do you
But
disagree or
certainly
you agree? You're being ambivalent here.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
You're being ambivalent. Do you
I'm
support
not
the
being
ban or
ambivalent.
disagree with the
I
ban?
would say that ideally no film should be banned. But at the same time, it certainly shows that Mamata Banerjee's heart is in the right place. And equally, it shows that there are decisions being made in Bengal, presumably in consultation with the law and order authorities, which are not for us outsiders to judge. This is entirely possible. I mean, I've seen situations in which, for example, specific bans operated in specific states or specific parts of states, sometimes specific districts, because of a specific threat to law and order. And I don't know what lay behind this. As I say, it certainly shows that the Bengal government has its heart in the right place and is obviously concerns about law and order, but it's not for me to judge. If you ask me as a general principle, do you want this film banned? I would say no. And in fact, even in Kerala, I have said, I don't think Kerala should ban the film. Let it be out there. But we all know the truth about Kerala, and we should remind people of that truth.
Things have actually entered a kind of absurd realm with 1 crore awards by both Hindu and Muslim groups talking about, a money cash prize for those who can prove the film to be true or false. But in the meantime, let's flip let's put the shoes on different feet. Jaishankar, India's foreign minister, had sharp words for you when asked about sort of your suggestion that maybe we should have a less thin skin. That was a completely different context. He might well say that to you today. Why do you have such a thin skin about it?
No. Let me stress that Mr. Jayashankar's response had nothing to do with what I was commenting on. And that's the disingenuousness and, frankly, the lack of homework in our media when these things happen. What happened was that Mr. Jayashankar addressed a Bharatiya Janata Party Yuva Morcha gathering at Cubbon Park in Bangalore and made some, frankly, intemperate statements that were clearly designed for the audience he was speaking to, about the West's habit allegedly of making comments on us and our readiness to make comments back on them and so on, which came across embarrassing. So the next morning, Monday morning, in Parliament, as I stepped out of the Lok Sabha, I was asked by the cameraman, what did I think of this particular statement by Mr. Jaishankar? And I said, frankly, I think he should cool it. But when he was asked about this later, he referred to the Khalistanis pulling down the flag outside the Indian High Commission in London, making his blood boil, which very frankly had made my blood boil as well. And I'd already made a negative comment about that earlier, saying it was unacceptable. So, for Mr. Jaishankar to use that episode, when that was not what I was talking about, was disingenuous in the extreme. He knows perfectly well what I was saying, that when you say these inflammatory comments to a youth group in in Bangalore, don't think it's going to stay in the Yuva Morcha's ears. It gets out in the media, it's reported nationally and internationally, and there are adverse comments as to why this is being said about foreign countries who, in fact, by and large, have exercised considerable diplomatic restraint in their comments on domestic developments in India. So when I said cool it, I meant cool it in that sense, and not about your blood boiling when the flag came down, because obviously for me too, as an Indian, I was outraged when the flag was pulled down, and I said so at the time, the very same day. And I would say that all Indians would feel the same way about that. So I think.
So what did you want him to cool it about?
I don't want him to say things like the West has this silly habit of commenting on our country, and we are going to give it back to them in the same kind of words. I don't remember the exact words, but you can Google Jaishankar, Cubbon Park, Bangalore, and Yuva Morcha.
Yeah. I remember what he said. He basically implied Western hypocrisy and said that while the West, is very quick to judge us, they're not so quick to receive that judgment. And he made that point. And isn't that point valid?
No, wait a minute. You're mixing that up with another statement of his, which I did defend, which was a statement he made saying that Europe must get out of the habit of seeing Europe's problems as the world's problems, but not seeing the world's problems as Europe's problems. That is the double standard he objected to. And there I was asked in an international forum at the Resina Dialogue on a panel that was entirely full of Europeans by a European moderator about that comment. And I defended Jaishankar, explaining that what he was trying to say in terms of double standards. But that is different from his comment to the Yuva Morcha, which was not about double standards at all. It was, in my view, intemperate. And the thing is that he's a very seasoned diplomat. I've known him for years. He's been our ambassador in Singapore, China, and Washington under UPA rule. So it's not as if this is a stranger or a political opponent throughout. He has now acquired a political identity, and I can understand his pandering to his political constituency. But the truth is that it's not necessarily what he would have done when he was an ambassador serving India's national interests in diplomacy.
Okay, let's come back to the Kerala story and the movie. You said you're disinclined to watch it. You said you believe that it is politically sort of motivated, it's mendacious, it's absurd, it's not the Kerala story. What do you think should happen next? You see, if you don't agree, if there's a bad book, you write a better book. If there's fake news out there, you put the truth out there. Do you think that those opposing the Kerala story have got the wrong end of the stick in how they are protesting it?
No, look, I think there's always this double-edged sword. The media comes to me and asks me a question. And there's a voice inside me that says, if I answer this question, I'm giving more publicity to a film I have contempt for. So should I answer it? But if I refuse to answer it, will that film's allegations remain unchallenged? This is a dilemma we always face. I mean, you folks are doing your job in the media by asking, you're devoting an entire show to this wretched film. And I don't even know it's a wretched film. I haven't seen it, but all I can tell you is what I've seen from the trailer and the publicity material, which was indeed wretched. By giving it this much of time, am I not giving legs to a story that might have otherwise died? I don't know. But I will say that, the internet is coming to the rescue. There have been good stories. I saw a couple of clips about the real Kerala story, quote unquote, being circulated also on WhatsApp. And there is a pushback. And I would say that on the whole, what we're going to see is probably one set of people with one set of preconceived notions supporting the publicity material for this film, and another set of people with their own sets of preconceived notions, which in my case, I believe are better founded preconceived notions, giving the other side of the story. And at the end of it, the public will determine. One of the sad things, Barkha, about the quality of our public discourse today is that everyone is just using every issue to reinforce their existing prejudices. There just isn't any serious dialogue taking place. So to one thing that I'll be grateful for is that when many of us zeroed in on this 32,000 number, the somewhat cringe-making film publicity was actually altered, and 32,000 was taken away and replaced by 3. So I would treat this as a small victory for the fact-checking corrections that we push back on. But the original damage had been done. They had very assiduously pushed out this message, and a lot of people still have the wrong idea about Kerala as a result.
So let me end with exactly that question. What is your favorite Kerala story?
Well, I would say that there are multiple Kerala stories that are my favorites, but my new favorite stories are the 2 that came out this year. One was a Muslim couple got married in a Hindu temple, another a Hindu couple that got married in a Muslim mosque, for reasons to do with local convenience and so on, undoubtedly, but that willingness by the religious authorities in both cases to embrace and welcome people of another faith. And then the story I already mentioned to earlier today of this wonderful moving episode where 3 children were brought up as Hindus by a Muslim couple because their single mother, who was their domestic helper, passed away, leaving these 3 orphan children, a couple of toddlers and a 6-year-old, I think it was. And all 3 were brought up by this Muslim family and married off, were brought up as Hindus by a Muslim family, encouraged to learn about and practice all their rituals, all their practices. And at the end of the day, marriages were arranged to Hindu spouses by this extraordinary family. I think that is the favorite Kerala story that I would cite today. But if you ask me 6 months from now, there may be more good stories along those lines or variations thereof. The wonderful thing about Kerala is precisely that we represent in our state a level of genuine syncretism, genuine Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb, even though neither the Ganga nor the Jamna flows in Kerala. We have 42 or 44 other rivers. And yet what we're talking about is a state where people are very proud of their state identity, their linguistic, literary, cultural identity. We have our own sort of legends. We have our own political quarrels. It's a heavily politicized state. But we do agree on one thing, that we don't judge people by which faith they were born into or brought up in. We don't judge people by their cultural practices, the food they eat, the dress they wear. We believe very much that that's up to them to be who they are. We want to be respected for who we are, and we want to respect them for who they are. And that honestly applies to 95% of Kerala society, maybe a larger percentage even. If there are a handful of others who have been seduced by other narratives to take a radical tone, welcome to it. But they haven't gone very far. I mean, none of the fundamentalist Islamist parties, the PFI, the SDPI, and so on, have even won a seat or come close to it in any election in Kerala. And for that matter, the BJP, in the entire existence of that party, has only won one assembly seat once and lost it at the next election, has never won a Lok Sabha seat. So you're looking at a very limited appeal for radical, extreme or communal ideologies in Kerala, and we all want to keep it that way.
Well, I was just going to say that maybe many more movies on Kerala should be made, because really the answer to a film you disagree with is just to make a different film in whatever form, or to tell a different story. You counter a story with another story. That's really the best way. And I'm glad you're not supporting a ban, but are telling all of these other inspiring stories. And I think that's the way to counter this debate. Thank you, Shashi. Always a pleasure.
I believe one of them is being made into a film in Malayalam.
Oh, really?
We should get it dubbed into Hindi and unleash it.
And then there will be the Kerala story, and the real Kerala story, and more politics. But the more the merrier, at least in terms of movies. Thank you very much, Shashi. Take care. Thank you.
All the best, Barkha. Good talking to you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Voice of Story and support independent, robust journalism.